ribbons, there lived a king and queen who longed for a child. Their palace was grand, filled with tapestries and music, yet their hearts were heavy because they had no little one to hold in their arms. One spring evening, as the queen leaned from her window, she gazed into the garden next door. It was not an ordinary garden. It was filled with plants that shimmered with a strange green glow. These plants belonged to a sorceress who lived beyond the palace wall, a woman feared throughout the land for her magic. Among the glowing herbs grew a patch of delicate leaves, fresh and crisp. The queen's eyes fixed on them, and her heart edged with longing. How I wish I could taste those leaves, she whispered. They look so green and good. Just one bite might ease the hunger I feel inside. The king heard her, loving her dearly. He could not bear to see her sad. So one night, under the cover of darkness, he crept into the sorceress' garden and plucked a handful of the leaves. The queen ate them and felt stronger, but the craving grew. Night after night, the king stole into the garden to bring her more. At last, the sorceress caught him. Her eyes flashed like burning coals. How dare you steal from me? She cried. You will pay dearly. The child your queen carries will belong to me. The king and queen fell to their knees, begging for mercy, but the sorceress would not relent. And so, when a baby girl was born, a child with hair as golden as sunlight, the sorceress appeared, wrapped her in a black cloak, and carried her away. She named the baby Rapunzel, after the very plant her mother had craved. The sorceress built a tower deep in the forest. It had no door, no stairs, only a single high window. There she kept Rapunzel, far from the eyes of the world. Rapunzel grew quickly. Her hair grew too long, long, longer still, until it shimmered like a river of gold down her back. The sorceress cared for her in her own stern way, but she allowed no visitors. When she wanted to see the girl, she stood at the bottom of the tower and called, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. Rapunzel would throw her golden braid out the window, and the sorceress would climb it like a rope. Years passed, and Rapunzel became a young woman. She was kind and gentle, with a voice so sweet that even the trees seemed to lean closer when she sang. Because she had no friends of her own kind, she made friends with the creatures of the forest. There was Whiskers, the rabbit, who liked to nibble clover at her window. Feather, the bluebird, who perched on her finger and chirped along to her songs, and Fluffy, the squirrel, who carried nuts up the wall and dropped them into her hands. Rapunzel loved them dearly, but sometimes when she looked at the wide blue sky, she whispered, I wonder what else is out there. In a neighboring kingdom lived a young prince. He was brave, yes, but more than that, he was kind. He loved to wander the forest on his white horse, listening to the whisper the sorceress came striding through the trees. He hid behind a trunk and watched. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. Down tumbled the golden braid, and up climbed the sorceress. The prince's eyes widened. So that is how one enters the tower, he whispered. He returned to the forest the next day. When the sun sank and the sorceress was gone, he stepped boldly to the base of the tower and called, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. Rapunzel was surprised. That voice was not the sorceress's. It was warmer, gentler, filled with curiosity. She peered out and gasped. A young man stood below, smiling up at her. His clothes were fine, but his eyes were kinder than any jewel. Who are you? She asked, her heart racing. I'm a prince of the neighboring land, he called. But more than that, I'm a traveler who has been guided here by your song. Will you let me come up? Rapunzel hesitated. She had only ever seen the sorceress, but something in the prince's face gave her courage. She let down her braid. The prince climbed, and in moments he stood before her in the tower. Rapunzel's cheeks flushed pink. Never had she spoken to anyone like him. They talked and talked. He told her about the outside world, about markets full of music, gardens bursting with roses, and stars so bright they seemed to sing. She listened with wide eyes. In return, she sang for him, her voice weaving through the room like silver threads. Day after day, the prince returned. They laughed, shared stories, and learned that their hearts beat in the same rhythm. Rapunzel whispered one evening, I wish I could leave this tower. Then we shall find a way, said the prince. Then we shall find a way, said the prince. I will bring silk little by little. You can weave it into a ladder, and one day you will climb down, and I will take you to freedom. Rapunzel's heart soared with hope, but happiness has a way of drawing shadows. One day, as the sorceress tucked herself up by Rapunzel's braid, the girl sighed and said without thinking, Why are you so heavy, mother? The prince is easier to pull up than you. The sorceress froze. Her eyes blazed. The prince sheathed. Rapunzel's heart sank. She had spoken too much. You ungrateful child, the sorceress shrieked. With a flash of her knife, she cut off Rapunzel's golden hair. The long braid fell to the floor like a coil of sunlight. The sorceress vanished Rapunzel that very night, sending her into a wild, lonely land far away. Then, clutching the severed braid, she waited in the tower. That evening, the prince arrived, as always. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, he called. Down tumbled the golden braid. Smiling, the prince climbed swiftly to the window, but when he reached the top, there was no Rapunzel, only the sorceress. She glared at him with triumph. Looking for you, precious songbird, she sneered. You will never see her again. The prince recoiled in shock. He eyes filled with tears. Prince, she sobbed, throwing her arms around him. Her tears fell onto his face, and as they did, something wondrous happened. The blindness faded, light returned. The prince opened his eyes and saw Rapunzel standing before him, her hair short, but her smile radiant. They wept and laughed and held each other, never wishing to part again. The prince brought Rapunzel back to his kingdom, where bells rang and flowers rained from balconies. The people welcomed her with joy, for they had long heard of the girl with golden hair and the voice of an angel. Rapunzel was no longer